Good evening, everyone. My name is Grace Stanton. I'm going to be talking about guardianship. So, what is guardianship? Melton discusses guardianship as the legal process where the court deems an individual who becomes the guardian, the decision maker for someone that is unable to make decisions on their own. Usually, this is due to mental illness of some type, a disability, dementia, something that along the lines of getting older, where they can't make those decisions, or cognitive delays sometimes, but that's not usually the most common. Overall, it's an individual that's found incapable of making their own decisions. We'll get further into that as we go along in the slides. Emergency guardianship. This is usually just for a limited duration of time, and usually this only happens when the court deems that first guardian that they implied or applied to that individual as no longer fit, or something happened. They have that emergency guardian. Next, we're going to go into factors to consider in evaluations. So these are when you're that evaluator, what to consider when applying that guardian to the individual. And overall, factors to consider for that individual as well. So the first one we have is understanding. The question you want to ask is, can the individual understand key and basic information about the topic of discussion? As I put here, Melton discusses that this is considered the baseline cognitive capacity, just the ability to comprehend basic information. Can they do that? Next, we have appreciation. This is when the individual is able to apply that information to their own life or situation. Do they understand the finances but can't recall their own financial state? Appreciation applies the most to people with schizophrenia, dementia, mainly mentally ill people, because insight deficits are most often evident in this appreciation. It requires a lot of self-awareness, and people with schizophrenia, dementia, they don't have that self-awareness. Like I stated in the question, they can understand basic life situations, but the second you ask them to apply it to their own life, they're unable to do that. So just keep that in mind with appreciation, that it requires that self-awareness, and that it is a lot of mentally ill individuals that experience this. Next, we have reasoning. This is the ability to understand information, different outcomes of that situation and ways of dealing with something. So, can they understand that information? Are they able to understand those different outcomes? And are they able to find different ways of dealing with something or with that outcome? Or this shows that the individual can make decisions and understand the benefits and concerns. So they have that more cognitive level of understanding. They can explain, why they prefer this over that, the long term versus the short term. You want to consider for this one a lot of hypothetical situations. Just keep that in mind, a hypothetical scenario of, why would you pick this over that, or making them use, more of that cognitive thinking. Next, we have expressing a choice. This is their ability to be able to make clear and concise decisions. Are they able to say who they even want as their guardian? That's a big factor. Ability to communicate. This is like that highest level of they're maintaining that most autonomy and decision making. So just keep that in mind. Some other things I wanted to include in here that I didn't write down, but just to speak about briefly are, like I said earlier, failure to consider alternatives. If you're not thinking about using a limited guardianship or any other type of guardianship, you're only focused on that full guardianship or only focused on that limited. You want to really think about what other alternatives are there that you can use. It's really important to not get that full loss of autonomy. And then the last thing I just want to say is to really discuss the cultural issues that you have to be aware of that when using this type of situation because it really cultural issues are tricky because what is rational or reasonable in each culture, you have to be up to date on what those cultures are and what their standards are so you can apply that to that person that you're dealing with. And then I have my references, so thank you.